Forge gang! Hardman, let's go! Alright, so this is the Warhammer, the Forge Master, coming back at you with the defeat of the German Empire, the Kaiser's Reich, in the First World War. So, for 1,000 years, for a full millennium, Germany was ruled by a monarchy that went all the way back to Otto the Great. Otto the Great, the Saxon, the man who defeated the Hungarians in the Battle of Lichfield, whom the Pope Urban or whoever, crowned him Holy Roman Emperor. From whence that title was bestowed, the Holy Roman Empire lasted for centuries until Napoleon abolished it in 1806, to be succeeded by the German Confederation and then in 1871 by the German Empire in its great defeat over the Second French Empire under Napoleon III. The German states unified and were brought together under Otto von Bismarck, a very staunch reactionary and conservative who pushed very hardline reactionary, anti-Catholic, and basically set up a very strong Lutheran-oriented, authoritarian, Prussian militarized regime of sorts. Now, Germany was highly expansionist, highly aggressive, but it was quite innovative, very inventive. A lot of great accomplishments was done between the end of the Napoleonic Wars and the outbreak of the Great War, the World War, the Weltkrieg. Germany rose to incredible heights. It rivaled Britain, it rivaled the United States, and it surpassed France in opulence and decadency. But Germany also had a very strong socialist party. There was a very strong socialist element in Germany. The highest members of anyone joining a socialist party in the world was in the German Empire. Germany also only allowed a certain number of men to vote. A certain number of men that paid taxes and who owned property could vote. The monarchy was very reactionary, very absolutist, but at the same time, the country was very progressive in many ways. Sometimes even more progressive than America in the same time period. And Germany was prosperous. The population was going up, and there was technological and industrial innovation, and there was a lot of railroads and stuff being constructed. Factories were being built. Germany led the world in chemicals and pharmaceuticals. But in 1914, that all came to an end. The Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated, and one by one, each of these countries and their alliances led each other into war. Now, Germany fought pretty well. It actually had a very effective submarine fleet. The soldiers had high morale. They were not boastful. Germany was able to, in spite of a blockade from the British, the Germans were able to self-supply and self-sustain themselves. But 4 years of war led the population to virtual starvation. Morale was lost. America joined the war. And the participation of fresh American troops on the Western Front was simply too much for the Imperial German Army to handle. Now, technically, the Germans were able to win on the Eastern Front. They got a truce with the Russians, and Finland became independent because of that, and eventually so did the Baltic states and the Ukraine. And the Germans were fighting on the Western Front. They were kind of doing pretty good, but after 4 years of dragged-on fighting in the trenches, they simply were outmanned and outgunned. The Allies had far superior planes and tanks, The soldiers had much better rations than the Germans, and in the what is it? The Argonne Offensive. What is it called? The Argonne Offensive. Americans, Belgians, British, New Zealanders, Canadians, French, Italians, and so on, all united and simply just overpowered the Germans. The Germans lost in a industrial production war. In a war of mass production, industrialization, imperialism, progressive policies, the Democratic powers won. Woodrow Wilson's 14 points were to be for the victors. It was a peace that was decided, first with the ceasefire and then with the Treaty of Versailles. The Kaiser was overthrown. All of the kings in the various German states were also toppled. And at the same time that the Weimar Republic was created, a constitutional, multi-party, universal suffrage-based federal republic, or whatever, in all of the different former monarchist states that were now free states in a republic, the German army simply revolted. There was an absolute revolt, and the communists and other socialist parties and stuff formed the Spartacist League. Rosa Luxemburg and Karl Liebknecht led the revolution. They wanted to basically have a German socialist revolution and create a German socialist republic. And there was the Bavarian Socialist Republic that lasted like 4 or 5 months, 6 months or something like that. And Germany was very close to almost, going into a communist revolution. Then the Freikorps stopped it. So the Weimar Republic was successful in establishing a multi-party parliamentary democracy on the French model and the Scandinavian model, and for the first time in its history, Germany was a republic. 1,000 years of monarchy was no more. This kind of process happened in all the parts of Europe that were under the Central Powers, and also in Russia. Germany basically was very impoverished. The situation for the people was very hopeless. But the Weimar Republic got off pretty well, but the defeat of the Kaiser's Reich in 1918 really changed the events of European and world history. The 19th century was gone, and a new and very turbulent 20th century was now ahead. The Great Depression, the Nazis, the Second World War, the Cold War, and the wars in the Middle East and in Yugoslavia all have their origins in the Great War. The defeat of Germany was very demoralizing, but what is so insane is that for the British and the French and the Belgians, for them, it did not feel like a victory. Their people were greatly demoralized. They felt as if the war was just basically a competition between different armaments industries and different bankers and corporation conglomerates pushing politicians and statesmen to drive people into a frenzy to go to war, and it was like a big brawl, a supposedly big gentlemanly brawl, and when it was over, it didn't feel as if there was a peace. There was no lasting peace, and ultimately this Versailles-Washington system broke down. For the Germans and for the Austrians, they felt as if they could have still won the war. The stab in the back myth was promulgated, and for many Germans and for many Austrians, they kind of felt as if they could have still won and the only reason they lost the World War was because they were stabbed in the back. And of course, this fed into the Nazis and into their propaganda. And yeah, so, in the end, Germany did lose, and it became very delusional and very disorientated and confused, pretty much, and it was driven into madness. I mean, what else can be said? The economy crashed, the people were starving, it was a pretty bad situation. Even the powers that won the First World War really did not economically succeed very well. The British Empire began to crumble and to break apart, and the great age of the Pax Britannica gradually faded away.